PS1 lived a long and fruitful life, but even as it started to look a little like Bilbo in Return of the King, it was still pumping out games as the PS2 whirred into gear. Fair warning, some of them are the video game equivalent of my reaction when I'm anywhere near custard creams. Don't take it from me, just see what you think. Hell yeah, C12 time. C12 Final Resistance is one of those games where you either get it or you don't. I love it, and I think a lot of kids whose parents couldn't yet afford a PS2 did too. Built by SCE Cambridge, yeah, that's the medieval lot, it hit Europe on April 6th, 2001, but it didn't reach North America until July 22nd, 2002. That's after GTA 3, by the way. It also ended up being the last PS1 title developed by Sony's European studio, which is a neat little epitaph, innit? C12 is set in a moody post-invasion Earth where you peel back alien hardware and blast through ruined city blocks with a cybernetic eye gizmo, and you get more android bits and bobs as you go. It's not quite, admittedly, a lost masterpiece, but it has a very heavy atmosphere and really good voice performances, especially for the PS1. Critical reception was fine. Metacritic sits at 63, bit harsh, with reviews praising the atmosphere and visuals for the hardware while grumbling about annoying camera work and dated siphon filter-ish gunplay. IGN called it just not that fun, thanks to the camera, but it is beloved by those who played it. But not many people did play it. Again, this was a PS1 game that launched in 2002 for its biggest potential audience, but that was a year after Europe, which is still odd. Compared to modern consoles and generations, once the PS2 was out, the support and interest in the PS1 dropped off pretty sharply, and C12 kinda came across as, a bit old hat. But if you were hanging on to your PS1 in 2002, this felt like a proper send-off rather than bargain bin filler. We'll see more of that stuff later. For now, X marks the spot. Well, not really. Mega Man X6 hit the PS1 so late in the day you'd be forgiven for thinking that Capcom's computers had been given the Philip J. Fry treatment. Capcom did seem to have some trouble letting go of the PS1 though, as the console got Mega Man Legends 2 the year before as well. They served that console well, didn't they? X6 itself launched November 29th, 2001 in Japan, December 4th, 2001 in North America, and February 2002 in Europe. That is a month before the GameCube remake of the first Resident Evil game landed, by the way. It's kind of crazy to think about. This was, of course, the 6th Mega Man X game and the last hurrah for the series on PS1, made without Keiji Inafune at the helm, and it shows. Sales were decent but not earth-shattering. Reviews were on the more mixed side though, and the game is a bit polarising still with fans. It sits at a 65 on Metacritic, with critics calling out recycled ideas, obnoxious level design, and the nightmare system, which, says a lot. The nightmare system was basically randomised hazards that felt more like a sadistic prank, and a lot of people think it's the worst game series because of that, and much more. Still, there is a certain grim fascination to X6, especially if you hate yourself slightly and feel like suffering. It could be like digital bloodletting, I guess. I mean, in its defence, it does also, of course, look quite lovely, so, it's not entirely forbidden. Technically, this is not that late, but that's only if you were in Japan at the time. You see, Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories took 3 years to come west, which is crazy to think about now, really. Does it ever take longer than a year, or even 6 months, for a Japanese game to be localised today? I don't think so. This game first dropped in Japan in December 1999 under the title Shin Duel Monsters, and didn't reach North America until March 20th, 2002, and then Europe in November 2002. That's the same month as the first Ratchet & Clank game. Though it turned up later than an every parcel when the driver was in a mood and wasn't popular with critics at all, Forbidden Memories became one of the most beloved in the franchise among fans. Don't ask me to tell you what the others are though, I kinda got lost and starved to death halfway down the list. Ugh. In Forbidden Memories, you play through a story that jumps between ancient Egypt and modern-day dueling, taking on opponents in one-on-one card battles. Win duels to grab new cards, climb the tournament ladder, and eventually face off against ridiculously overpowered bosses. Remember, right, balance just doesn't exist in Yu-Gi-Oh!, so don't expect it in the video games either. While Forbidden Memories is extremely tough these days, it's not too bad. It's not too bad if you can get it on alternative software with rewind abilities, if you catch my drift. There's a whole new world out there if you're willing to do 5 minutes of Googling. Everyone remembers where they were when they got haunted for the rest of their lives by the very first Digimon World game. Nobody knew what was going on, there was poop everywhere, digital monsters were dying. It was a great time, and apparently they kept making them basically all the way through the PS1's life. Digimon World 3 slipped out on June 5th, 2002 in North America, interestingly before its native Japan got the game on July 4th. Weirdest of all, it didn't come to Europe and Australia until November 15th, 2002, and was then renamed Digimon World 2003. It came out in 2002. It's not a FIFA game. Unlike its predecessors, Digimon World busted single year 3000, ditched the digital pet template and went pretty much full JRPG. You guide Junior through a virtual MMO RPG called Digimon Online, battling to save trapped players and foil digital terrorists. It even includes multiple Digivolution types like Blast and DNA, but the reviews were like a D and not an A. Metacritic averages a pretty bad 47 out of 100, with GameSpot only giving it a 4.9 out of 10. Just an annoying number, that is. Official US PlayStation Magazine labelled it profoundly mediocre and only for die-hard Digimon fans. And you can tell from the user scores on Metacritic that those fans did really jive with Digimon World 3, with plenty of love for the graphics, music, and Digimon-ness. Right, let's go pro. You know what, sometimes it is really easy to see how people can really struggle to figure out where to start with fighting games. Here's one, right, that's a port of an upgraded version of an arcade game that came out on the Dreamcast in the 6th generation, but was then ported backwards to the PS1 and the 5th generation in 2002, and not the PS2. Okay. Released in July 2002 for Europe, but August 2002 for North America, Capcom vs SNK Pro, or Capcom vs SNK Millennium Fight 2000 Pro in Europe. Yeah, this one's a late PS1 game that's a bit hard to wrap your head around. Not least of which because the actual PS2 crowd were already playing Capcom vs SNK 2, so the PS1 getting Pro instead of a PS2 port of that one feels properly upside down. But it's easy to have fun with it, all the same. The PS1 port keeps all the original 3-on-3 team battles and ratio match system, where you assign point values to characters depending on how powerful they are. The PS1 version trims backgrounds and frames and has a bit of loading, but it's still a clean, fast 2D fighter with a big crossover roster. It even has a couple of new fighters on that roster. Metacritic sits around 74, with write-ups basically saying that it's a great fighter, but if you go to PS2, play CVS2. And that's fair enough. But still give this a go, even if it isn't the best option in the world. Right, time to go pro. Again. After the series basically changed pop culture as we know it, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 was the first big shake-up for the series. No more strict 2-minute runs, instead you could skate around freely, chatting to NPCs for challenges and stacking ridiculous combos without a stopwatch breathing down your neck. Why didn't they do that for the remake? On PS1 though, that open structure survived mostly intact, but you could feel the old console puffing to keep up. This came out in October 2002, just a few days after what would have been my 11th birthday. Say happy birthday for 23 years ago down in the comments please. I need this. Developed by Vicarious Visions, who would go on to do remakes of the first two games nearly 20 years later. Well, we remade the fourth one as the third one, but whatever. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 on PS1 is not great. And it's not just because it's on the same old engine as the other PS1 games. The levels were smaller, textures blurrier, manuals finickier, and the frame rate occasionally hit PowerPoint during busier moments. Worst of all though, the soundtrack was compressed within an inch of its life here, and there's like half as many tracks compared to PS2 overall. But you could probably still get something out of this version of the game if you were young and hadn't guilted your parents into getting you a PS2 yet. The classic formula never really ages, so you can still pick up this up and have quite a lot of fun for a couple of hours even today. Give it a yash. You know, like bash? Give it a bash? Inuyasha? That doesn't work, does it? Whatever. Inuyasha, a feudal fairy tale, adapts the tale of a modern day schoolgirl who tumbles into Japan's Sengoku period, teams up with the half-demon Inuyasha, and spends most of her time hunting for shards of a mystical jewel while fending off demons and bickering with her travelling companions. It is a classic. Released 1 month before Vice City, this calendar-allergic PS1 tie-in game is a basic 2D fighter with a twist. You're collecting shards of the Sacred Jewel of 4 Souls from your opponents mid-battle to fill up your spirit meter for supers. There are mini-games sprinkled in and unlockable characters if you do well enough. It tries to follow the anime's plot, but mostly it plays like a mech-less Mortal Kombat with shin shards. Critics were nice. In a specific way, you see, because Metacritic clocks it in at a 69, with verdicts along the lines of decent enough if you're into goofy budget fighters and had no PS2 in 2003. User opinions aren't kind, many describe it as stiff, shaky and derivative, with one calling it a fighting game that seems rushed from the start. That's not quite fair. It is an anime fighter, so you just go in and press some buttons and worry about balancing later. You're just meant to do cool stuff and look cool. It's really just a game you're meant to pick up and enjoy for an afternoon and, have some laughs with a few friends. It's not that deep. Anyone expecting tight fighting systems built for Evo should probably sit this one out. Everyone should sit this next game out though. Ugh. Oh man, listen, Hellboy Asylum Seeker is bad, but it's interesting because it's bad on a unique level. It started life as a terrible PC game called Hellboy Dogs of the Night, then got ported to PS1 in 2003 by a different studio, and somehow got even worse. On PC, it scored a pretty jaw-dropping 11.5% on game rankings, but the official US PlayStation magazine gave the PS1 version 0.5 out of 5. The reviewer, with rosary beads in hand, said, "God help me, I didn't think it could ever be this bad." But oh, it could. For a game released in the same month as the first Splinter Cell game, you'd expect Asylum Seeker to at least look like it belongs in the same decade, but this thing absolutely reeked of a quick port. From the shocking controls to the awful audio to the embarrassing combat, this is a survival horror game that makes the titular Hell Dude look like a weirdly proportioned bozo. Why does he go down the stairs like that? This game sucks not just because it was a rushed release thrown out like a fart in a graveyard in the PS1's dying days, but because it's the rare case where the port was way worse than the original, and it was bad anyway. If it had come out in 1996, we might have been able to overlook its rough edges, but for 2003, this was so awful that it felt like a slap in the face. A slapstick. Now, I wouldn't usually include a game like this, as really, there's just not much to talk about in terms of gameplay, but wow, this is kind of fascinating. Originally, this Three Stooges game came out in 1987. Yes, that was a little while ago. This PS1 port, coming out almost 2 decades later just for North America, is buried so deep online that I had to use 2 different archives to find its PS1 release date of February 7th, 2004. I'm not even 1000% sure on that, because some sources say 2002, but the back of the case says 2003, but like data centers for this kind of thing say 2004. It came out very late anyway, and probably just for a laugh. You see, this is fundamentally a game built for the Amiga. The PS1 port barely changes the structure, or well, anything. The graphics are a bit better, but the sound is really bad for a PS1 game. In terms of gameplay, just a series of short slapstick minigames linked by a wafer-thin plot about raising money to save an orphanage. It's the Three Stooges, you know, to be fair. It's not Magnolia. The update adds digitized stills, grainy FMV clips, and some cleaner audio in spots, but the gameplay is exactly what you'd expect. Pie throwing, hospital gurney races, and simplistic door picking stuff. But this game was criticised for its simplicity in the 1980s, releasing on PS1 in the same year as Half-Life 2, San Andreas, and Halo 2. You'd be a bit of a stooge to buy this one, honestly. Ooh, stay silent. The final game of the day is coming right up. Don't spook it. Right, okay, for this one, I'm just going to have to go with an ambiguous 2004 for the release date. Silent Iron is a game that's so obscure and came out so late in the PS1's life that basically nobody bothered to archive it anywhere. Silent Iron is a PAL-only PS1 rail shooter from Nap's team, published in 2004 by Phoenix Games. Yes, that Phoenix Games, the bargain bin specialists who turned low-effort releases into a business model. They were like the Asylum of video games, but without much of the plucky, shameless charm. They were just bad. Think of Omega Boost if you stripped out the speed, spectacle and budget, then sold what's left for scrap, and you get the pretty crap Silent Iron. You pilot a mech through 13 short, straight-ahead missions, locking on with missiles or hosing targets with a basic gun while skating over a very flat plane. Basically, it's less than an hour of going left, sometimes going right, and shooting. And that's it. It doesn't even have dual shock vibration. Dual shock vibration in 2004. Oh, you can fly through rings for pickups, which every great game has. Every great game. Here's an interesting thing for you. Naps and Phoenix did actually rename Silent Iron to War Drones, and then re-released it as part of a 7-game slopfest compilation called Shoot, which came out in as late as 2005 for the PS1. That's a year before the PS3. That's nuts. That box art is way cooler than any of the games included actually are, though. Oh shoot, would you look at that time. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. It's been good to have you, and I'll see you when I'll see you.